You're finished. 1 minute to pack your things is more than enough for your worth. Don't think you're more important than the chair you're sitting in. The chair can be replaced, but what you just lost cannot. Thank you for giving me the right timing.
The first sound wasn't his voice. It was the hard snap of a leather folder closing. Then came the sentence that cut the room in half, effective immediately. Grayson Wells is terminated. The conference room froze, charts hung mid-slide, coffee cups hovered inches from lips. No one breathed. At the head of the table, Ethan Rowe, the newly appointed CEO of Northline Forge, didn't look at me. He didn't need to. To him, I was already gone. 7 years. 7 years of building Northline's core platform from a half-funded prototype into the system that powered nearly every enterprise client they bragged about. I wrote the original architecture. I negotiated the emergency extensions when funding dried up. I slept under my desk during the merger talks because uptime mattered more than comfort. And now it all collapsed into one sentence. This wasn't a private firing, it was theater. Every board member watched. Every vice president took mental notes. Ethan stood there calm, polished, rehearsed like a man reading weather, not ending a career. I felt the heat rise behind my ears, not anger, something colder. When he finished, I gathered my notes, closed my laptop, and stood. I nodded once. "Thank you," I said. The word landed wrong. A few people shifted in their seats. Someone coughed. They mistook it for surrender. It wasn't. "Before we go any further, how are you holding up today? If you're listening from home or work, maybe take 1 second to glance at something that grounds you: a photo, a plant, the window. There's a bigger world beyond boardrooms. And if this story already pulled you in, tapping like and subscribe helps keep these stories coming." What Ethan Rowe didn't know, what the board didn't know, was that my role at Northline Forge was never just a title. And when they cut me loose in that room, they didn't remove risk. They activated it. Because 2 years earlier, during a temporary cost restructuring, I'd done something no one else bothered to read closely enough to notice. And 13 days from now, that oversight would end Ethan Rowe's career. The silence after my firing followed me all the way to the parking garage. I sat in my car longer than I should have, hands resting on the steering wheel. Engine off. 7 years of routine ended without ceremony. No exit interview, no handshake, just a badge that stopped working and a sentence spoken too cleanly to be accidental. By the next morning, my phone lit up not with sympathy, but confusion. Are we allowed to keep deploying? HR told us to pause everything. Do we still answer client tickets, messages from engineers, product leads, even a junior analyst who had joined 3 weeks earlier? They weren't asking how I was. They were asking if gravity still worked. Northline Forge had been built to look stable from the outside. Inside, it leaned on a few quiet load-bearing beams. I had been one of them. And when Ethan removed me in front of the board, he hadn't replaced anything. He had just cut that afternoon. I walked into my apartment and dropped my bag by the door. The place felt smaller than usual. Too quiet. I stood there for a moment, staring at the wall, wondering if I had finally miscalculated. Maybe this time I had trusted the wrong people. Maybe preparation had limits. The doubt didn't last long. At 3:15 p.m., my phone buzzed again. A single message from Caleb, a systems intern who barely spoke during meetings. They don't know who owns the original framework. Do they? I stared at the screen. Of all the people at Northline Forge, Caleb wasn't supposed to know anything beyond test cases and error logs, and yet his question hit the exact nerve. No, they didn't know. 2 years earlier, during a brutal budget review disguised as temporary optimization, I'd been given a choice: freeze development or find another way to keep the system alive. I chose the second option, quietly, legally. I routed the core architecture through a holding entity created for risk insulation. A dull name, boring paperwork, approved without discussion. The board trusted titles. I trusted clauses. That evening, my kitchen table turned into an archive, old binders, printed contracts, notes written at 2 a.m. when exhaustion made honesty unavoidable. I found the email that mattered, the one buried under approval threads and polite corporate language. In the event of leadership termination or project oversight disruption, all licensing authority reverts to the original architect until reassignment is executed in full. I read it twice, then a third time. Ethan Rowe thought firing me was control. In reality, it was a trigger. The room didn't get bigger, The doubt didn't vanish, but something shifted. The helplessness drained away, replaced by something steadier. Leverage. Northline Forge was still running, still selling, still promising things they no longer had the legal right to deliver, and none of them had noticed yet. That night, I didn't sleep. I planned. The first crack appeared 9 days after I was fired. Not with an explosion, with a pause. Northline Forge had scheduled a tightly choreographed investor demonstration, live dashboards, real-time simulations, the kind of presentation designed to make cautious money feel inevitable. Ethan Rowe had promised stability, confidence, momentum. I wasn't in the room. I didn't need to be. I was at my apartment desk, coffee gone cold, watching quiet messages drip into a private channel my access hadn't been revoked from yet. Someone had forgotten to remove me. Or maybe no one realized it mattered. Demo starting. Audio's clean. Ethan looks relaxed. Then nothing. 2 minutes passed. Screen froze. Ops can't authenticate. Getting authorization pending. I leaned back in my chair. In the auditorium. The room filled with polite confusion. The kind executives use to pretend they're in control. Ethan laughed it off, waved toward the engineering team, blamed a minor latency issue. He promised it would be resolved in moments. Moments stretched. 10 minutes, then 15. Every attempt to restart the demo produced the same gray line across the main display. License authorization expired. Someone in operations raised their voice. "That's not a demo error?" Another investor checked his watch. Ethan's smile tightened. At my desk. I said nothing. I didn't touch a keyboard. I didn't make a call. This wasn't sabotage. It was gravity. 9 days earlier, when they terminated my role, the fallback access expired automatically. No override existed without my signature. No one had bothered to confirm who held it. In the room, questions sharpened. Are we still compliant? Why wasn't this disclosed? Who has control of the framework? Ethan stalled. He spoke faster. He promised follow-ups. But every word landed softer than the one before. Confidence evaporates quickly when numbers are watching. By the time the session ended, investors weren't angry. They were unsettled. And unsettled money moves. Back in my apartment, my phone buzzed. They're panicking. Someone wrote, "Legal's asking questions they don't have answers to." I felt no rush, no triumph, just a quiet confirmation. That night, headlines didn't break. Northline Forge's PR team worked overtime. Minor technical delay, no material impact. Systems fully operational. Ethan even appeared on a short call, assuring everyone the issue had been resolved. It hadn't. What he restored was a surface environment, a hollow shell designed to survive a demo, not a contract audit. Anyone who looked closely would see it, and someone always looks closely once doubt enters the room. I closed my laptop and stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker on. Northline Forge still thought this was a glitch. They didn't understand yet. The first crack isn't meant to destroy, it's meant to warn. And they had ignored it. Many people listened past this part. But if you stayed, you know it matters. The call came the morning after the failed demo. Human resources. I watched the phone vibrate on the table for a full 3 rings before answering. Not out of hesitation, out of curiosity. I wanted to hear how desperation sounded when it tried to dress itself up as concern. "Grayson," the voice said, warm and practiced. "We've been meaning to check in. How are you holding up? I looked around my apartment. The same chair. The same table covered in papers. No corporate badge. No calendar full of meetings. Just quiet. Honest quiet. "I'm fine," I said. A pause. Then relief. "That's good to hear. Look, the last few days have been complicated. Leadership feels it might be beneficial for everyone if we talked about restoring continuity." There it was, the script. Carefully chosen words designed to avoid apology while still begging for resolution. "You want me back?" I said. "Well, yes," she replied quickly. "The team respects you. Investors have questions. We believe your presence could stabilize things. Of course, compensation adjustments are on the table. Money. Always money. As if numbers could erase intent." I let the silence stretch. I imagined Ethan Rowe standing just outside her office, arms crossed, jaw tight, waiting for a thumbs up. He had fired me publicly to look decisive. Now he needed me quietly to survive. "You don't have enough," I said finally. "I'm sorry you don't have enough money," I repeated. "Not to buy back the years, not to undo the decision, and not to purchase my silence." Her breath caught. I could hear pages turning, scripts failing. This isn't personal. Grayson, it's about the company. That's the problem, I replied. It was always personal. You just didn't notice when it mattered. I ended the call before she could recover. 2 days later, an email arrived with a subject line that made me stop. Invitation to discuss strategic alignment. The sender wasn't Northline Forge. It was Halcyon Vector, one of their closest competitors. I read the message twice. Short, precise, no sympathy, no gloating. We understand recent developments. If you're open to a conversation, we'd like to explore options. Attached was a single name, Marcus Vale. I knew it instantly. Former senior architect at Northline. Brilliant, difficult. Fired 3 years earlier by Ethan Rowe for not fitting the leadership culture. I closed the laptop and leaned back. This was the moment most people dream about and mishandle. Revenge disguised as opportunity. Validation masquerading as power. I didn't reply immediately. That evening, Northline Forge released another statement claiming full system restoration. Ethan appeared confident again. Too confident. Confidence built on surfaces doesn't survive audits. I knew what was coming next. Systems fail quietly at first. Reputations don't. I finally typed my response. Coffee. Tomorrow. Neutral location. No promises. No leverage revealed. Just a door open far enough for the truth to walk through. Northline Forge thought the danger had passed. They were wrong. They had survived the warning. The consequence was next. The cafe was deliberately forgettable. No branding, no glass walls, just chipped wood tables and low music that made eavesdropping impractical. The kind of place executives never choose unless they're trying not to be seen. Marcus Vale arrived on time. He looked older than I remembered, thinner. Sharper around the eyes, but the posture was the same. Upright, alert, like someone who had learned the cost of underestimating rooms. Grayson Wells, he said, sliding into the chair across from me. I wondered how long it would take them to realize they fired the wrong person. I didn't smile. They haven't realized yet. Marcus chuckled softly. They will. The server dropped off coffee without asking. He'd already ordered for both of us. That told me something. Confidence or preparation? I'll be direct, Marcus said, leaning back. Halcyon Vector doesn't believe in coincidence. Your termination, their system instability, and Ethan's sudden press tour didn't go unnoticed. You're assuming a lot, I said. He nodded. We're paid to. He pulled out a tablet and placed it face down between us. He didn't turn it on. He didn't need to. You built Northline's framework. He continued. Not the surface tools, the spine. And if I'm reading the situation correctly, they no longer legally control it. I said nothing. Marcus watched my face, searching for confirmation. He didn't find it. He smiled anyway. That silence tells me enough. I took a sip of coffee. Bitter. Over-extracted. Poor choice. But fitting. What does Halcyon want? I asked. The truth, he said. And a future where it isn't wasted. He finally turned the tablet toward me. A single document filled the screen. Familiar formatting. Familiar language. My clause. Buried. Approved. Forgotten. Ingenious, Marcus said. Routing authority through a contingency entity during a cost freeze. They thought it was housekeeping. They always do, I replied. Halcyon wasn't offering sympathy. They were offering scale. Marcus slid the tablet back and folded his hands. We don't want Northline to collapse. We want to replace them. There it was. No drama. No revenge fantasy. Just clean corporate intent. And me, I asked, you wouldn't be an employee, he said quickly. No badge, no reporting chain, advisory authority, veto power on implementation. You protect what you built? I looked out the window, across the street. People moved through their days unaware that companies rose and fell on sentences no one bothered to read carefully. Northline Forge still thought this was fixable. They were wrong. I turned back to Marcus. If I say no, then Northline bleeds slower, he said honestly, and someone else buys the remains. And if I say yes? Marcus met my eyes. Then Ethan Rowe learns what it costs to confuse titles with ownership. I stood, leaving cash on the table. I'll let you know, I said, outside. My phone buzzed. A single message from a former board contact. Emergency session scheduled. They're asking who actually controls the framework. I slipped the phone into my pocket. Halcyon wasn't the beginning. They were the confirmation, if you're listening closely. You already know what's coming next. Don't you? Northline Forge collapsed for the second time at 9:17 a.m. Not during a demo, not in front of investors. This time, it failed in production. Client dashboards went dark first, then internal tools. Then the monitoring wall, normally a river of green, bled into red lines no one could silence. The message was identical, unforgiving, and everywhere at once, license authorization expired. Phones lit up across the building. Engineers scrambled. Managers shouted. Someone tried to roll back a version that had never been legally activated in the first place. Ethan Rowe stormed into the operations floor. Jacket off, sleeves rolled like a man who believed posture could fix architecture. He demanded answers. He demanded logs. He demanded to know who had touched what. No one had. That was the point. Within an hour. Word reached the board. By midday, clients were freezing payments. A partner postponed a renewal call until clarity returned. Clarity never returns on its own. It has to be delivered. And Northline had no one left who could. I watched the updates arrive on my phone while sitting at the same kitchen table. Same chair, same coffee ring. Different weight in the air, this time. The panic was sharper, more specific. Legal can't certify continuity. Compliance wants a named authority. They're asking for you. Directly. By early afternoon, the board requested an emergency session and invited me, not HR, not Ethan, me. I arrived early, walked past the same glass walls where people avoided eye contact. Inside the boardroom, the confidence was gone. The table looked longer, the chairs felt smaller. Ethan stood near the window, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the skyline as if it owed him answers. Grayson, the chair began carefully. Thank you for coming. I didn't sit. Let's be efficient. A director slid a folder toward me. Inside were timelines, impact estimates, and questions circled in red. Do you control the framework? Another asked. Yes. Ethan turned. This is insane. He said, you were terminated. You don't have authority, I finished calmly. I do. You approved it. Silence fell. Someone exhaled too hard. I placed my own folder on the table. Copies, signatures, dates. Their dates. I'm not here to negotiate my return. I said, I won't restore access. The room stiffened. What I will do, I continued, is sell the framework. Ethan laughed short. Brittle. You can't sell what the company owns. I met his eyes for the first time. I can sell what the company never read closely enough to keep. No one spoke. They were already doing the math. Northline Forge wasn't broken. It was locked. And the key was no longer theirs. 2 days later. I walked into Halcyon Vector's headquarters through a lobby that smelled like fresh paint and intent. No one rushed me. No one pretended not to stare. I wasn't there as a guest or a consultant. I was there as leverage made visible. Marcus Vale was waiting near the elevators, expression neutral, eyes sharp. They know, he said as we walked. Northline's board called our legal team this morning, indirectly, poorly. I'm sure they did. I replied. The conference room upstairs was quiet in the way only expensive rooms are. Thick glass, soft lighting, a single folder placed precisely at the center of the table. No logos, no dramatics. Marcus slid the chair back. Before we begin, this isn't revenge. This is replacement. He opened the folder. Numbers don't shout. They don't need to. The figure printed near the bottom of the page did exactly what it was supposed to do. It ended arguments before they began. The offer was clean. Full acquisition of the framework. Immediate transfer of licensing authority. No clawbacks, no non-compete traps disguised as goodwill. I didn't reach for the pen. I have conditions, I said. Marcus nodded. Expected? I won't be an employee. I continued. No title, no reporting line, advisory authority only. Implementation veto. I protect the architecture from being hollowed out. Marcus considered that, then smiled slightly. You're not selling code. He said, you're selling continuity and accountability. I added. He slid a second page toward me. Blank. Waiting. I took my time writing. Clauses don't forgive impatience. When I finished, Marcus read slowly. Once, then again. He didn't interrupt. Finally, he looked up. You've built yourself a permanent seat at the table without being owned by it. That was the point. I said, outside the room, my phone vibrated, messages stacked up, Northline's board, their counsel, an apology drafted by committee. I ignored them all. When the pen touched paper, there was no rush of triumph, No cinematic release, just a quiet alignment. For the first time since the boardroom ambush, my work would move forward without being filtered through someone else's insecurity. Marcus extended his hand. I shook it once. Northline will fold fast, he said. They built their narrative on your silence. Then they misunderstood me. I replied, by the time I stepped back into the elevator, the deal was done. 13 days after my firing, the framework that defined Northline Forge no longer belonged anywhere near Ethan Rowe. The city below looked the same. Traffic moved, people hurried. No one noticed the transfer of power happening several floors above them. They would soon, because when ownership changes quietly, collapse tends to be very loud. If you leave here, you will miss the most important thing. The headlines didn't arrive all at once. They trickled in. Cautious at first, Northline Forge faces temporary licensing dispute. Company assures partners of continued stability. Ethan Rowe was still trying to outrun the truth with phrasing by midday. That strategy failed. A major client paused a rollout, then another. A third requested written confirmation of licensing authority, something Northline could no longer provide without lying. Legal teams began speaking to each other in the careful language that signals exits, not fixes. At 2:40 p.m., the stock dipped, not a crash, a flinch. Investors don't panic immediately. They test, they probe, they watch how leadership responds when the answers stop lining up. Ethan held a hastily scheduled call. Voice firm, posture confident, he spoke of legacy contract misunderstandings and pending clarifications. He never said my name. He didn't have to. Everyone in the room already knew where the silence was coming from by the end of the call. The dip turned into a slide. Northline's internal channels leaked next. Someone always screenshots before deleting. Compliance memos, internal debates. One line circulated faster than the rest. We do not currently possess exclusive control of the framework. That sentence cost them more than any technical failure. By evening, the board forced a closed-door meeting. No assistants, no consultants. Just directors, counsel, and a CEO running out of room. Ethan argued he blamed process, he blamed former leadership, he blamed unforeseen edge cases. No one interrupted him. They didn't need to, because while Ethan spoke, Halcyon Vector released a statement of its own short, precise, devastating. Halcyon Vector has secured exclusive licensing rights to a core enterprise framework previously utilized by Northline Forge. We look forward to supporting clients seeking continuity. No accusations, no commentary, just confirmation. The market reacted immediately. Northline's stock dropped hard enough to trigger a halt. Analysts scrambled. Talking heads filled airtime with speculation they should have seen coming sooner. I watched from my apartment, the same chair, the same table. Only now, the quiet felt earned. My phone rang once more. The board chair. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call, and another. I didn't answer. The next morning, Ethan Rowe resigned. Not publicly at first, internally. A personal decision. By noon. The truth surfaced. The board had removed him to preserve what little credibility remained. Cameras caught him leaving the building tie loose, eyes fixed on the ground, the same doors he once stood behind while ending my career. I felt no urge to celebrate. Collapse isn't satisfying when you understand how preventable it was. Northline Forge didn't fall because of me. It fell because it mistook confidence for control and never asked who was actually holding the system together. And the world finally noticed, after the cameras left. The silence returned. It settled differently this time, not heavy, not accusatory, just present, the kind of quiet that follows something irreversible. Northline Forge still existed on paper, but everyone inside knew the truth. The company wasn't moving forward anymore. It was unwinding. Clients migrated carefully, one by one, using neutral language that masked urgency, strategic realignment, continuity planning. Engineers updated resumes in private. Middle managers practiced optimism they didn't feel. I wasn't involved. That was deliberate. Halcyon Vector moved quickly but cleanly. They didn't gloat. They didn't poach recklessly. They offered stability where Northline offered explanations. In this industry, that difference decides everything. 2 weeks after the acquisition announcement, I walked into Halcyon's development floor for the first time, not as staff, not as leadership, as oversight. People didn't stand when I entered. They didn't need to. They already understood the boundaries. Marcus met me near the architecture wall. We've implemented your safeguards. He said, Nothing moves without sign-off. I nodded. Then it'll last. That afternoon, I sat with a small team reviewing transition plans. No rush, no heroics. Just work done correctly, the way it always should have been. I caught myself enjoying it, not the power, but the absence of distortion, no one pretending, no one posturing. Later that evening, I found myself back at my apartment, scrolling through messages I hadn't opened. One from an old board member, one from HR, one from Ethan Rowe. I opened his last. It wasn't long. No excuses, no accusations. I underestimated you. I thought control came from position. I was wrong. That was it. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, because the conversation was already finished. Northline Forge would sell off what remained within the quarter. The name would survive in footnotes and cautionary decks. Ethan would land somewhere quieter, farther from authority. He always would. Men like him do. And me, I wasn't interested in rebuilding what had rejected me. I had protected what mattered, then let the rest fall where it belonged. People think revenge is loud. It isn't. It's quiet decisions made early, clauses written carefully, silence used precisely. 13 days after I nodded and said thank you. Everything that had been taken from me was no longer up for debate. I didn't win because I fought back. I won because I never stopped owning what I built. The final meeting took place in a room without cameras. No press, no statements, just signatures and the soft sound of pages turning. Northline Forge's remaining directors approved the divestment plan in under 20 minutes. There was nothing left to debate. Once the framework left, the illusion went with it. I wasn't invited. I wasn't required. That was the cleanest ending possible. Weeks later, I walked past the old building by accident. Same glass facade, different tenants moving in, measuring spaces that used to be filled with certainty. I didn't slow down. Buildings don't remember you. Systems do. Halcyon Vector never announced my role publicly. That was part of the agreement. Influence works better when it doesn't need recognition. I reviewed designs. I stopped shortcuts. I asked questions that made people uncomfortable for the right reasons. The work felt honest again. One evening, as the city settled into its quieter hours, I sat by the window and thought about the moment it all began, the folder snapping shut, the sentence spoken too calmly, the eyes that never met mine. I remembered nodding, saying thank you, at the time. They thought it meant defeat. What it really meant was closure. Power doesn't announce itself. It waits, it watches, it moves when everything else lines up, and when it does, it doesn't need applause. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's this: your value isn't decided when someone fires you. It's revealed by what still answers to your name afterward. If you're listening to this and you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, or quietly removed, don't rush to prove anything. Build carefully, read everything, protect what you create before you're asked to defend it, and when the moment comes, you won't need to raise your voice. You'll just nod, say thank you, and walk away knowing the story is already written. When everything went quiet after that boardroom moment, I finally understood something simple and uncomfortable. Real power isn't loud. It doesn't argue. It doesn't explain itself. It waits. I didn't win because I spoke better, fought harder, or embarrassed anyone. I won because I protected what mattered long before I needed to defend it. That lesson stays with you, not just in business, but in life. People may take your title, your seat, even your routine, but they can't take the value you quietly built if you never gave it away. As you're listening right now, ask yourself something honest if the story ended here. Would you feel at peace with how you handled your own moments of being underestimated? And did you stay with me all the way to the end before you move on? Do one small thing for yourself. Stand up, stretch your legs, and roll your shoulders once. Nothing dramatic. Just a reminder that your body carried you through this story too. By the way, where are you listening from today? A kitchen, a car, a night shift, or a quiet living room? If this story meant something to you, I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. A like or share helps this reach someone who might need it. And if you want more stories like this, you know where the subscribe button is. No pressure, just an open door.